What is having fun without a little legal disclaimer? So here we go. The information contained in the Beardaddio podcast is for general entertainment purposes only. Beardaddio assumes no responsibility for errors or omissions in the contents of the Beardaddio podcast. The hosts of the show are not mental health experts. The information about health provided by the Beardaddio podcast is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. If you think you need medical advice, please contact a professional. Now let's enjoy the show. Recording from a traveling tin can parked somewhere in the USA, it's the Beardaddio podcast. It's the podcast that's like life in reverse. You understand less as the time goes by. Now let's welcome our hosts, Trama and Jen, as we unfocus on the Beardaddio podcast.
Okay, hello everybody, and welcome back to the Beardaddio podcast. I'm Trama.
And I'm Jen.
And, wow, what's that thing?
Not mosquito.
Yeah. So it's a lovely night in New Jersey, and we're sitting out in our camper, Martini, the not-so-big tin can. There was a tulip festival today. It was pretty crowded, huh?
Yeah. A lot of traffic.
Yeah, we usually leave town on the days where it's at high energy behind us. There's a giant tulip farm, and there were thousands and thousands of people must have been going there all day. So we run away and then come back when they're gone, because there's not a lot of roads here, so ours gets pretty busy. So today we're following up on where we were headed last podcast, where we talked about ADHD in relationships. And we did a sort of a Q&A type session. I asked Jen some questions, like ask an ADHDer about things and how she dealt with relationships. And now that her relationship has evolved into parenting, a 3.5-year-old, I guess Margot is now.
Mm-hmm.
So 3.5 years of parenting have occurred. And why don't we just sort of set the vibe today and think about, Jennifer, what was the biggest ADHD moment you think you had this week? Which one was the most interruptive?
Oh, God. Biggest?
Mhm.
Is today a big one?
I don't know. Any time this week. When did ADHD affect you the most? And you felt like, maybe you didn't even recognize it.
Yeah.
But do you ever reflect on those kinds of things?
Yeah. And then I immediately will try to forget about it so I can focus on the other thing. Let's see. What affected us the most? I would say during the work week, we've been really busy at work, and I had to take a lot of stuff home, work on it at night, and I get home and I'm just gonna work on this for 20 minutes, which turns into like 3 hours.
Yeah.
And before I know it, I'm like, oh God, it's 9 o'clock and Margot hasn't eaten, hasn't showered. I still have to make her bed, and then that gets thrown off.
So I guess in the wake of the Hyperfocus, did it get you through your work stuff at least?
No. No, I mean, I got a little bit done, but I still didn't get to a state of completion or anything ready for Monday. But it's enough where I can start a conversation when I go back tomorrow. So
Yeah, I mean, trying to turn some of these ADHD traits into positive things isn't the easiest. There are, I guess, darker, less silver linings than there always are, or people think there might be. Yeah, because in the wake of that hyperfocus is everything else that has to happen, which always brings up the question, how do you feel? Or, I mean, I guess the ADHD happened when Margot was around, the diagnosis, or was it before you were thinking about having a kid?
oh yeah, it's been around forever.
Yeah, I mean, like your knowledge of having it, your diagnosis, your knowledge of having ADHD, was that impact you before or after the decision or having Margot?
I mean, I don't know if I'm understanding correctly. Has my ADHD
Which came first, diagnosis or Margot?
diagnosis.
Right. So going into the concept of parenting, you knew where you stood with ADHD.
Yeah, but honestly, I didn't think it would affect parenting as much as it has. I thought I was gonna rock it, you know?
I don't think that's crazy because I don't think anybody rocks parenting, but
It's so
it's
much harder than I thought it was
I think
gonna
it's the
be.
hardest thing.
Yeah.
It's and not because it's like a lot of work, but it is a lot of work, but it's also an emotional thing and like all those things that ADHD traits sort of get triggered by, and like intense focus on something, intense emotional attachments, executive functioning, getting things done because you have a little one who's not really focused on getting things done.
Oh.
But I mean, that kind of transitions into our first question, which is, what was your biggest fear about raising a child with your ADHD? That's why I had to kind of figure out if you had a diagnosis before.
Yeah. Um, I can remember, like, before when I was pregnant with her, my biggest fear was not being able to connect with her.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think that was my biggest fear because if I can't connect with something, I can't engage.
But don't you think, like, I've noticed your connection, your empathy is pretty strong for most living things, but you did have a fear about your own child?
Yeah, I did. And to be honest, I'm gonna be completely transparent here with my
Yeah.
situation, but it probably took me about 6 months to feel really connected. Like at first, I think it was just felt like I was in a different planet when I had her. 'Cause at first I never thought I would. I never saw myself having a child, and then we did. It was planned because one day I woke up like, okay, I want to have a baby. I guess because I met the right person. It happened, and then I lost my track. Where was I going with this?
I wish I knew.
Oh man.
Well, you were ready to have a kid, biological clock,
Yeah.
in a relationship with someone willing to parent with you, and you were concerned about the connection, and it didn't happen for about 6 months.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, there's also like postpartum depression things that can kick in. Also, cesarean versus natural birth
Yeah.
change things. I mean, personally, I think what you saw as a connection might be different than what actually occurs with people, because I think your bond with her is strong, and I mean, I understand like those months after delivery are extremely hard. Big change, no sleep, all the things that aren't great overall for anyone, let alone somebody who's dealing with trouble in that area anyway.
And we were also in a unique situation 'cause she was born in 2020 during COVID.
Yeah,
And it was also in the winter. Well, it was November.
yeah,
So there were no parks open, not only because it was cold, but because COVID wasn't allowing people to go to
right.
parks. My mother couldn't come over to help because we were afraid. We're terrified of Margot getting sick or us getting sick.
But she did get COVID.
You didn't really have paternity leave.
No,
So I was alone for the first 4 months ish.
at least 8 hours out of a day.
So I had to keep this thing alive. Seriously, at first it was just didn't feel real. I felt like I was on another planet, to be honest, for the first maybe at least 2 or 3 months, I think. I didn't register. I just couldn't believe this was my life.
Yeah, I mean, also, yeah, I mean, there's that idea that it actually happened,
Yeah. I
right?
don't know if that's ADHD. I don't
No,
know if
that could be
that's
anything,
just being a mom, I
right?
think. But
No, I mean, I think that yeah, okay, so I'm not diagnosed with ADHD. I have been through a childbirth prior with my son, um, Jackson, like 18 years ago now, geez, and have seen this before, but even so, each time it's like, well, one, why did I do this again? I know it's a lot of work, but yeah, I think I did see a bit of a struggle. However, you really, on the other side, you really poured a lot into it. Um, at least on the surface and underneath too. Ultimately, it might have seemed like you just didn't do enough, or maybe it wasn't exactly right. But I think, there was definitely a lot of attention and thought put into it,
Yeah.
and whether it be on the board, too little or too much. It wasn't like you were like, well, I'll just figure it out later and, you know, do what I have to do. It was definitely some focus on how to get through it, and noticing the things that basically were your parenting style on a personal level, and also things that might have been ADHD influenced, which is kind of the next question, which is, how do you think your ADHD has influenced your parenting style?
Hmm. Okay, the first memory that came to my mind when I was super pregnant, we're setting up her room, and we had to put this stupid tree sticker on the wall, which came with a trunk and like 100 different individual leaves.
Right.
And I felt like I wanted to die because I didn't know what was the perfect direction to put the leaves. Like to this day, that's one of the hardest thing I had to do.
S-
Like
Okay.
you
Yeah.
don't know what angle you're gonna put the leaves, what branch you put it on, like, is it gonna look perfect at the end of the day? That drove me crazy.
Well, I mean, you didn't feel like any of the outside the box thinking, ADHD creativity stuff where it's like, yeah, I mean, maybe it was because you had this concept of what you wanted and all the parts were there.
It was an over I think it was overwhelm, and then it
Right.
became paralysis for me
Yeah.
because you want it to be so perfect. Because it's like for me, it's the only time I'm having a kid. You want it to be you want the vibe to be right so she's able to sleep. Because that's how I am. If nothing's perfect in my environment, I'm not comfortable. So that's was all going through my mind. Like, what if the leaves don't sway the right way? So it became like a rumination, I think,
Right. And
and
it's,
then ended in a paralysis.
I know, because when I'm doing it, I'm just like, oh, this one looks good here and looks good here. And you're like, how do you do that? I'm like, you just put it up there.
Yeah.
I mean, how could it be wrong? It's a tree. Trees, you know, aren't perfect
No.
or nowhere to pattern. If it looks like, if you actually put a pattern to it, it probably doesn't look right.
Feel of a tree.
Yeah. I mean, I put a leaf coming out of the stump of the tree and you're like, they
Yeah.
don't do that. I'm like, this tree does. This tree's weird. It's a sticker.
Anyways, I
Yeah.
don't want to talk too much on this.
Well, that's the whole point.
Let's go back to the
So the
question.
question was, how has your ADHD influenced your parenting style?
So definitely, I think we touched on this before. I've been in hyperfocus since she was born. So I think about where, at this point in life, she doesn't really have a vision, at least that she's shared with me, because I know she's 3, but where she wants to be in the future.
Worship me in
So,
10 minutes.
yeah, so I'm trying my best from things I've read, podcasts I've listened to, people, professionals I've spoken to try to set up a thick, solid base, a grounding, so that when she gets to a point where she can make a choice for herself, she's able to do that intelligently. So I just want to make sure she feels safe, she feels grounded, and that she has the tools that she needs. So I spend a lot of time deciding like what kind of things I'm going to focus on to teach her so that she is ready for when the moment comes.
I mean, is there obviously this is like the downside of the hyperfocus, because I think, yes, you have hyper focused on those things, most of them, probably if not all of them, very positive. And, when she shows signs of resistance or dislike of some of the things, do you think your hyper focus overrides that? Do you hear that?
There are it's just some different it depends on if I have enough sleep, if I've eaten, how am I that day? Because
Right.
I'm very
It's more
moody.
anger or yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes I haven't been angrier than since when I had Margot, I felt this type of anger I've never felt my whole life. It's because it's like
Because of something she did?
yeah,
Okay.
just like it's mostly because my momentum's going right, but she wants my momentum to go left. And to make that 180 degree turn for me is very hard because I'm so
Focus.
struck on focus and going this way. And she's also like me in that sense where she's stubborn and has to do it how she wants to. So being able to switch on your heels like that for me is very hard. So I think I've learned, and I guess that's patience, I never had patience, and now I taught myself how to have patience because you don't want your kid to see you blow up and go in the red zone and that to be a norm.
Right.
So I try my best to not have her see that. So I'll do the 180 and I'll fold, but it's very hard to do that, I think.
And yeah, I agree. And I think it's also something that I have seen, and it's probably known. I mean, mothers focus on their kids. I mean, it's part of nature. It's part of, parents and mothers in particular, will focus on their child. So your hyper focus might not be too hyper, but definitely it's hyper focus. And the one thing I want to add before we go to the next question, because you sort of touched on it, is I think that she's of that age and has been for some time now, where they pick up on that and she knows you focus on her. And now when you don't, and you're either normally dealing with something else or hyper focusing on your new thing of the week, um, it becomes noticeable that she feels a void. Now, of course, it's normal to not be able to focus on a child 100%, but I think that might be a tough thing for all of us to learn how to deal with. It happens with kids with non-ADHD parents, and I think it's just going to be something where we'll have to see where it goes. But that's leading to the next question, because this is something I've tried to instill, and it's hard when it's, very, um, I'm focused on it and trying to get it to happen, and it's a lot of work, which of course this whole thing's a lot of work. But what systems or routines have you put in place to help manage the household, or mainly the parenting responsibilities? You mentioned a little bit about how you have this hyper focus thing on it. There's a lot of time consumed that's hard to recognize, because it's like, if we have to get somewhere at a certain amount of time, to get her ready is very flexible because she doesn't know what time is, and hurrying up right now doesn't seem to work very well. But if it's like, hey, we got to go in 30 minutes, it'd be like, okay, well, just get her ready. And it's like, well, she didn't eat, she didn't get dressed. It's going to be at least an hour before she decides she wants to walk out the house. But I mean, do you see that you're trying to, do you put in place any systems or routines?
Yeah, definitely. It might just be, I don't know. So every kid's different,
Mm-hmm.
So at least for Margot, which is she's kind of like me. Like so it's all about decisions. You know how the more decisions you have to make in a day, the more tired you get, and more fatigued you get over time over the course of the day. Well, I'm like that very much so. Even simple things like, what are you gonna wear today? Like, what am I gonna eat? What am I gonna bring for lunch? And pack for lunch. The amount of decisions you have to make just before you go to work is enough where when I get to work, I won't even take the stairs. I actually have to take the elevator. Otherwise, I have a hard time setting up at work because I get so tired. But with Margot, so before I forget what we're talking about,
There's a system or a routine?
so the system I do with Margot is I try to do like really quick punches of activities before we get her dressed, because Margot doesn't like getting dressed. She hates wearing clothes. I don't know why. It could just, who knows. But so I'll like to have at least 3 activities. We'll color, we'll paint, then we'll watch Gabby's Dollhouse, and then like do some kind of food activity that coincides with that show, or like,
I mean,
for
don't
example,
all those take a lot
that.
of time?
They do, but if you kind of like plant the seed in her brain,
That there's something to do. And
yeah. So if I'm gonna go do Gabby's Dollhouse, watch that show, and do an activity with that, first we'll go in the bath, and I'll plant the seed in her head, like, okay, well, let's bring the Gabby cats into the pool, and we'll play with the Gabby cats in the pool. I'm like, oh, this would be really cool. Why don't we like take them out and we'll go watch Gabby cats, and we can go play over there. So it's all kind of connected and like some art, like an artistic thing.
I also hear timers going off every now and then.
So she's learned to set her own timers.
Well, I mean, are you using that as a tool to help move things along, right? That's not like she initiated.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's
we did and said,
that's
okay.
helping, yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because, I mean, how long is 5 minutes? That's the death toll of my timing with an ADHD. to be quite honest, is your time management is sometimes relatively spot on, and sometimes it's like, okay, I have to leave this house at 8:20. I don't think 8:20 means 8:20 to you. Sometimes it's like sometime between now and by the time I get fired, for not being strung up at work, right? Which I've dealt with, and but it's like, all right, we've got 20 minutes. And it's like, all right, well, I'm going to feed her, dress myself, do my hair, and this. I'm like, I don't know if that's going to work.
I
And-
feel like I have this magical power to make it work.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Like if I have to, if it's like death, like die, or like I can make it work for sure.
I hope no one I work with listens to this, but I don't think I've been to work on time in 3 years. So whatever your magical power is, your magical power hasn't gotten me to work on time. I mean, it's gotten the kid out of the door 80% of the time. So as far as magic goes, you're not failing. You might be a B in that. So, yeah, I mean, like, that's just the reality. But I mean, that's the reality of it. And then it just turns on the back end to excuses like, well, do you really have to be there on time? I'm like, come on. I'm like, well, we backslide into that. Like, we really don't have to do anything or wear clothes.
You really think about time. What's the significance of like 15, 20 minutes?
It keeps us fed and the lights on. This whole entire podcast
Well, that's
thing
why,
is free.
we won't go down that rabbit hole because I have a very strong opinion about this topic.
Yeah,
so
I know. So, yeah. Well, so I think the routines of time management are important, and we've tried setting timers. We have. If she ever listens to this, she'll kill us.
Before we move forward,
yeah.
With the timer thing, I'm just gonna add.
Yeah.
I make her set her own timer so she can watch the time, so she learns what like a minute means, what 5 minutes means, what 3 minutes means.
Do you learn while she learns?
I mean, I have ADHD. I don't think I do ever learn, but she might not. So, but she can at least watch it, so the anticipation of the time ending isn't there because she's able to monitor it over time. So that kind of fear or like angst you feel from like not knowing is gone. That's eliminated.
I think it's important that she understands I mean, that's the thing. We're 100% focused on her needs. Obviously, we have needs that she has to respond to certain things and feel is important, right? And that's got to be learned, because right now, me getting to work on time is not very important to Margot. And I think one thing I've noticed with you is you do take the time to try to explain it to her and not just jump to like, do what I say because you have to, no explanation. That's something that bothered you.
Yeah, I'm completely against that. I don't want her to grow up and thinking that you always have to listen to an adult because they're adult. Because just because you're an adult doesn't mean you deserve anything, respect or anything. Yes, you have a lot more experience than a 3-year-old, but that doesn't mean that you can demand their respect. So I always say, if an adult tells you something, whether it's a teacher, whether it's me, your dad, any other kind of person that you think you could look up to, always ask the question, like, why? If you don't believe them, ask why.
Yeah.
If you need clarification, ask for it. You don't be afraid to stand up if you don't believe in something.
No, that's a strong thing from you. Sometimes it comes down to trying to explain to a 3.5-year-old why you don't feel like getting yelled at by your boss because you showed up late for 3 years straight. So, I mean, like, but still, we try very hard to make it an explanation, try to rationalize it to her, try to negotiate with her with different levels of success. Sometimes it does just end up like one or two times I've just dragged her out of the house kicking, screaming, sometimes with shoes on, sometimes without, because I'm like, you got to get in the car, you got to go. But it wasn't like every day. It feels like every day when it happens because it's very draining, and just negative energy just surrounds everything, and everybody knows it's going to be miserable. But it usually turns around in about 10 to 20 minutes.
I can't do that.
I know.
I would rather lose my job. Because it's all about the vibe. That's why I don't work for an employer like that. I need that flexibility. And I have a very strong relationship with my boss. And why do I have that? Because I communicated with him what I need. He knows what I need, I know what he needs, and we both get it done. And
Yeah.
the flexibility has to be there for people like me,
Yeah. So
I think.
I know, and I think that's good because that's one of the ways you deal with this is, might not be open with exactly it being ADHD, but some of the needs you have around it and also parenting, you're vocal about. And now it comes down to, like, sometimes I have to feel how can I interject my needs in there
Yeah.
and basically also help you. So that's another issue that comes up with parenting no matter what. And I think the importance is with the ADHD, it's sometimes um, some things work great. The creativity is spot on. It just takes time. And when it starts, it is time and time added due to cleanup because I don't think there's any creative thing you've done with her that doesn't involve a huge mess.
Well, I've learned, like,
Not to leave oil paints out for a 2-year-old.
not only that, but you know what's funny? I saw a post a few months ago, I guess. There's some random post on Facebook. It was like a picture of like a dishwasher. And someone was saying, like, you know what? I was having a hard time with my week today. I was feeling overwhelmed with my psychiatrist, and this psychiatrist was like, "So, what would make you feel better?" She's like, "Well, if I don't do the dishes." She's like, "I'm just so tired of doing dishes. I have so much shit at home, like a mess. I don't want to do it." So he's like, "There's no rules in life." He's like, "So just wash them twice. If you put them in a dishwasher and wash them twice,
Yeah.
there's no rules in life."
Yeah, we wasted a little bit more.
So
We'll move on.
you have a mess, just leave it there till you get back. Whatever. It's not the end of the world.
That's me. I need to cook on top of it. But
I mean, I do feel that weight right there, but then,
Yeah.
like, it's not the end of the world. If it's
Right.
her getting out of the house on time, it's everyone's safe, fine.
Okay. So we talked a bit about hyperfocus. Just real quick, sort of to punch this one is, how do you deal with I mean, obviously they happen, but how do you deal with those moments where the hyperfocus might be not directed toward your child or me,
Mm,
partner, and it, you're not as available? Is that something that you see happening or has happened?
I
Does it
think
even register in your head?
yeah, I'm struggling with that now actually because I've been super engaged in this really fun symposium, and the talks are like, they go away after a certain amount of time. So I'm been really engaged trying to listen to as many as possible.
Mhm.
But with doing so, I'm not fully present. So, you know, we're struggling as on the romantic level because I'm so engaged in these talks.
Well, that's because they happen, and I just like it'll be no warning, and I'll be like, well, maybe if it was like again the scheduling thing, like I'm going to have to do talks at 8, 9, 10, and midnight, then at least I know, like, all right, so you're gone for the rest of the day, right? Instead of being like walking around the house and talking to you, and you've got earbuds in, and I have no idea if you're hearing me or listening.
Yeah.
So I mean, just like just a slight warning of like, hey, I'm going to be zoned out for the next 7 hours. And I'll be like, cool, because I shouldn't do some more.
That's a good question because I think I struggle with that. I don't really know if I do deal with it well because I think you guys struggle and I don't even notice 'cause I'm so engaged in what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I've learned that interrupting someone in hyperfocus, they just snap.
Oh, I get aggravated.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's just sometimes it's like I just personally weigh knowing that's going to happen and knowing it's not anything, knowing the outcome of that and how much it's problematic to me and you versus like what is it? It's not like I would do it and be like, hey, can you get me a roll of toilet paper? I'll just shimmy over to the next bathroom, pick it up, and go back like I just did. But you're already like in focused onto something.
I felt so like it's so invasive. First of all, focus to me is like a diamond. You know how hard it is for me to to be focused, especially for a long period of time. And when I'm in it, like once you break it, I get out of it, and that's it. Like if once I get out of focus, you can't get back in. So I need to ride it, and if you interfere, it's so invasive to me. I get so aggravated, and I actually get angry.
Mhm. Yeah, I know that's pretty common with at least people I know dealing with people with ADHD, and it can't be easy for you because to basically move that energy from whatever you're enjoying or obsessed with, whether I don't even know if it's enjoyment or not, but whatever dopamine surge you're getting, to have to be like torn away from it and shift that energy and then try to get back is hairy at any cost. And yeah, I definitely sympathize with what's happening. And it's only like, oh my God, the house is on fire. Can we think about something else besides crystals for a minute, just a tiny bit? So I guess a good place to go with this, and you probably mentioned a bunch of these, but maybe just to focus on this one question before we take a bit of a break, would be, can you share a specific challenge you faced in parenting that was directly related to ADHD and how you overcame it?
Good question. Directly related to ADHD. I think I have to think about that one.
So a big challenge that you faced. Isn't everything a challenge?
Yeah, everything's really hard for me. This job is being a mom is so hard for me. I feel like I come off very negative about the mother experience. It's just that, I mean, I love it. It's just also sometimes I hate it too. It's so hard.
That's honest. I mean, but even when you hate it, it's like usually the end of the day, and you're just like, I'm gonna kill her if you just don't like.
Not like real kill.
I
I just
know.
I just feel like I have so much creative energy, and with being a mom, at least how our life is, I can't find the time to express myself. I don't have time. At least I can't find the time to write. I can't find the time to.
Well, I think you've channeled some of that though. If you talk about how you deal with it, is you definitely come up with creative things to share with her, and it's not just like I'm going to sit beside you while you do this craft. I mean, like you get into it too with her and try to pull her into almost everything
Yeah.
when you're positively using your energy. You know, if you're hyper focused on making a cake, that's going to take 8 hours out of a day and blow up the kitchen, you'll pull her into it and just, you'll. So I think there are times when you have the hyper focus and want to get it done. And then there are times when it's a creative thing and you share it with her because she's going through that phase right now where she wants to do everything,
Yeah.
wants to help with everything, and gets upset. Unfortunately, she gets very upset, overreacting in my book
Yeah.
when she can't do something she exactly wants. She's like, I want to go outside and cut down a tree with a chainsaw with mom. I'm like, I think you should stay inside because there's a chainsaw and a tree
Well,
falling.
I let her
I know,
actually.
I saw.
So
I'm like,
I'm very. I explained to her how and it was a chainsaw.
I know. I'm over hyperbolizing for
It was pretty much a chainsaw,
on
but
a
it's for
stick,
yeah, on
hedge
a
trimmer
stick.
on the stick,
A hedge trimmer. There you go. And so it's long,
and
a
heavy, and I
different
had
kind
no
of
idea.
blade process, but so I let her hold the back end of it.
Yeah, I saw her like running over,
Yeah.
touching it with two hands.
And I told her, you can't go anywhere near the blade. She was like, no, you can just help me guide it. So I let her have these experiences.
Farm life. We're gonna have a kid who loses an arm in a thresher, or something. Like, get away from the rototiller.
But the thing is like I enjoy teaching her and having her have these experiences with me. But at the end of the day, I still need the time alone
Yeah, I know.
to
Right.
get into my own self and self-expression.
Right. I think that is the number one thing that is the challenge, and that is, finding your place for yourself. I think it is just morphing that into the actuality of there will be limited timing
Yeah.
and it won't be very scheduled. And I was very hard for me to learn this with my son because it'd be like, all right, I make plans for the day, and you know me, I'm more OCD about plans. And then it's like, I'll take my kid, and then it just blows up. And you just got to realize there's some things you're just not going to be able to do. And it's going to happen. Like you said, it's not that big of a deal. You're just going to have to do it another day. If it's something extremely important and time sensitive, like you find a babysitter because that's the only way you can guarantee you'll get it done. But then your time's limited, but at least it won't be your time's limited. And if you're going and you're like, I have to bang some things out. And then your kid's like, nope, ain't having it. I'm going to have a fit. And then you're going to have to stop. And it deflates the energy, that is like, all right, that was my chance. It's over now. We'll just redirect and try again.
Yeah.
So I think we have found time. It's just, it has to be more scheduled. It's more costly, in many ways, but it's like anything else in life. If you really want to do it, you will find it. And the hardest part is not shunting everything away so that you can be alone, because you're never alone with a family and a kid.
Yeah.
So those things come, but they have to be a bit more organized, especially if you got something to do like a podcast or write or whatever way you're trying to create. But other ways you do it are, all of a sudden of like, hey, you want dinner? You're like, yeah, sure. And then like 3 hours later, you come in and be like, I've woven half a basket. I hope you're selling it because we got to eat dinner.
Yeah, my fingers were bleeding yesterday.
I know, just like, what are you doing? But the point is, you need this space for creativity, and you're right there. Right there, there are some wisteria crowns and some bowls for making potions.
So this is
which is like you're like the kids are gonna do this with each other, and I'm like, no, you're gonna do this, and the kids are gonna have to come along because this is Jen Taylor wanting to do something that Jen Taylor wants to do, and the kids will be like, can we please just go to McDonald's and get Happy Meals? And you're like, make this fairy potion first. Maybe it'll work. Maybe they'll be into it, and you'll be super happy. Or you'll just do it and be like, I'll be super happy anyway.
Yeah, I've learned that.
All right. So, yeah, now it comes down to like communicating. Ooh, what's that? Did Margo up?
No, it's just Winter.
Okay, the cat's trying to eat the baby.
No.
All right, that's good.
Yeah.
The cat's been a little bit more accepting of the child recently.
Yeah, I think because Margot's getting older and is pulling her tail.
The cat's getting old.
Well, that too. But
Everyone's getting older at the same rate,
maybe not.
Except you. You're like an old lady now.
I'm not.
All right.
Why?
I don't know, because I got to take a break. So you
Okay.
can go pee.
I do need some water.
All right, we'll go take a break then, and we'll be right back.
Disclaimer: you have just indulged in an episode of the Birdadio podcast. Before diving into more episodes, it's important to consult with your sense of humor to ensure it's robust enough to handle the content. Do not engage with the Birdadio podcast if you are allergic to laughter, deep thoughts, or spontaneous outbursts of joy. Warning: the Birdadio podcast contains ingredients known to provoke thought, laughter, and the occasional existential crisis. Side effects may include, but are not limited to, uncontrollable smiling, leading to facial soreness, sudden bouts of thinking so profound you forget your coffee on the roof of your car, an increase in sweating due to intense laughing fits, swearing allegiance to the Birdadio as your primary source of entertainment enlightenment, head smacking upon realizing the sheer genius of the content, a desire to become a birder, regardless of prior disinterest in our feathered friends. In rare cases, listeners have experienced a phenomenon known as podcast binge listening syndrome, PBLS, where one feels the inexplicable urge to consume every episode back to back, leading to a severe decrease in productivity. If you experience PBLS lasting more than 24 hours, congratulate yourself on discovering quality content, but maybe go outside or something. Listeners are advised to enjoy the Birdadio podcast responsibly, and remember to share with friends for a doubled side effect potency. This disclaimer is meant for humorous purposes and should not be taken as medical advice. Always enjoy your podcasts responsibly.